Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about two important stories. First one is about the political and economic situation of Pakistan. Today the Lahore High Court has ordered a recounting of votes for the election of Chief Minister of Punjab. Now if you remember that the PMLN government in fact end up getting 197 votes when the Deputy Speaker held the counting process, and the magic number was at 186. So they ended up getting around 11 more votes. Now, if you minus the votes of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, that is around 25. So if you do the basic math, the number comes down to 172. So what about the 14 votes that they need in order to form the government again? Now the process is going to be held tomorrow, and let's see what happens. But again, as I said, that political uncertainty is again prevailing in Punjab. The government is making painful efforts as far as the economy is concerned. We all know that the price hike as far as gas is concerned, or you talk about the electricity, and perhaps now petrol subsidy is going to be removed as well. You could see a jump of 50 rupees minimum in the coming weeks ahead. Not abruptly, but definitely in certain slabs. But let's see where it leads. Inflation again is going to go up. Yesterday I was listening to Mifta Saab and he mentioned that yes, new taxes have been imposed. One tax that is called super tax that is going to generate over 200 billion rupees. But interestingly, if you look at the figures that were set by the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, that was 6,000 billion as far as tax collection is concerned. They ended up getting 100 billion more. So that is something which is going to definitely support the current government. As far as the next target is set, we all know at times we always end up setting ambitious, rather over-ambitious targets. But at the end of the day, I think the tax net needs to be increased, because that is the only way forward. Bring in more people into the tax net so that the burden on the salaried class in particular should be taken away. Now, when we talk about the overall economic situation, again another story that perhaps the State Bank of Pakistan is going to increase the interest rate further. That is definitely going to affect and create a negative impact on the growth. So everything is interlinked. In order to develop a certain fiscal space, when you in fact emphasize on that, you need to take a lot of things into account. But if you change one digit, obviously the other one is getting affected. You put more pressure on the people for the tax collection. Again, there is going to be a lot of hue and cry, because that makes a lot of sense. But having said that, now the government has no other option. Plus on top, when you talk about the IMF program or the package, again, so many conditions have been attached and associated with that package that perhaps at the end of the day, the common man or the final consumer is going to suffer. This is what the story is. But first of all, we'll be talking about the Lahore High Court order, and that is regarding the recounting of votes in the Punjab Assembly. Now, to talk about that, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio, on my right is Dr. Naazir Mahmood Saab. Needs no introduction, is a senior columnist. Pleasure to have you in the program, Dr. Saab. And on Skype, we have with us Barrister Saifullah Ghauri Saab. He's an expert on politics and on legal affairs. Thank you very much, Barrister Saab, for your time as well. And we'll also be talking to Dr. Aqdas Afzal Saab, a senior economist, in the second half of the program, and he's going to join us on the telephone. But let me start off from you, Dr. Naazir Mahmood Saab. Now, the Lahore High Court issued a detailed verdict, and they said that the election for the choice, I would say, of the Chief Minister has been declared as null and void. Now, they have said the counting process will be held tomorrow, immediately, right after maybe at 4 o'clock tomorrow. This is what we have learned. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, almost within 24 hours. A lot of people of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, they have gone to perform Hajj. They are in Saudi Arabia as we speak, around 6 or 7 of them. Now, as I earlier mentioned, sir, they ended up getting 197 votes, and that's how the CM, Mr. Hamza Shahbaz, was elected. But sir, if you subtract the number 25, because those votes will not be counted, that number comes down to 172. But the magic number is 186, still minus 14. Your take, sir.
Well, the court verdict, I think, has created some certainties and some uncertainties. Overall, I think it is a good decision because the opposition, presently opposition, that is PTI, that was not happy with the change of events in April, and of course they had the constitutional and legal right to challenge in the court. So first of all, this is a constitutional and parliamentary process, and in democracies this happens. So there is nothing to be highly perturbed or disturbed about. Only in dictatorships you have stability, because there the dictator can manipulate.
It's a one-man show basically.
And it's one-man show. But once you have democracy, on and off such turn of events takes place. So this is one. So what are the certainties that have come up after this decision, and why I appreciate the decision? Certainty is that they have validated the decisions taken by Hamza. So they have not immediately invalidated Hamza's election as chief minister. Then the next certainty is they have said that till the election, the next voting, he will continue as the chief minister.
That is for another 24 hours. Next election means that you're talking about the recounting that is supposed to be held tomorrow. So the uncertainty is that if, as you mentioned, if they are unable to get the majority, what will be the next? So that is the uncertainty that we are looking at. But I think that probably then it will again go back to the court, and if nobody is, if they are unable to get the right number, that is 186.
The right number, if they are unable to get the right number, of course it is an uncertainty who will be the next chief minister.
Exactly.
And I mean, this is a bit sad also, in the sense that for the last over 4 years we have been playing games with Punjab. Punjab is the largest province of Pakistan with over 120 million people, which makes it
almost more than half of your population.
More than half of our population, and which is, if it becomes an independent country, will be the 12th largest country in the world. In terms of population, there are only 12 countries in the world which have more than 120 million people. So we are talking about such huge province, which is almost a country. So first of all, why I am saying that we have done so much injustice to Punjab, because first of all, if you look at the previous government in which they appointed Mr. Buzdar, it was a surprise decision. He had no experience, right from a union council level you appoint somebody as to head a province of 120 million people, and the result is in front of everyone. So it was a joke kind of thing. Again,
whereas Punjab should have been leading from the front.
And not that PTI did not have good senior politicians. They had senior politicians.
Shah Saab yesterday, said something which totally went against PTI, because he was right that he was made to lose the election of the Punjab.
That is what he is alleging. And then even not only Shah Mahmood Qureshi, but even Parvez Ilahi was in the run, and Parvez Ilahi under Musharraf,
he could have done a lot better job.
A lot better.
Yeah.
So there were some very wrong decisions that were taken, and ultimately when the government changed in April and Hamza Sharif became the chief minister, there was hope that now stability will come and things will improve, and he very quickly. I was expecting that he's too young and he won't be able to handle things, but surprisingly in the last 2.5 months I think he has done pretty well. He has taken some right decisions, but irrespective of that, ultimately he has to prove his majority in
No, that is a huge question. That's on top. Please, I want your comment on this before I go to Barrister Saab. There was this tweet by Cyril Al-Maida in which he mentioned that if Buzdar wouldn't have resigned from the CM as the CM, things would have been different. You agree with that?
I think he was asked. He couldn't resign without Imran Khan asking him, because he was towing his line. So I think he knew the situation, and Imran Khan was expecting, because within PTI people were against Buzdar, and Imran Khan thought that maybe if Buzdar resigns another person from within the PTI will become chief minister. But that was a bit too late. So he could not save the situation.
All right. Now coming to you, Barrister Saab, first of all, I'm sure you are following the story of the decision taken by the Lahore High Court. Now the question is that what is going to happen next? Your legal and political expertise, what do they tell?
Obvious what's going to happen tomorrow. There's going to be elections. It's very likely that, and I mean, it's practically writing on the wall, as you've already stated, that Hamza Shahbaz does not have the prerequisite votes of 186, but that's just the first round. Under Article 130, subsection 4 of the Constitution, it states that after the first round, you then have to go for a second round. And in the second round, you do not have to reach a number of 186. Instead, you go for whoever wins the majority. So after the recounting is done, the PTI votes are excluded. And if in case nobody is striking 186, then they will go for a second round. In that second round, it is very likely that PMLN will edge out PTI and Hamza Shahbaz will come back as chief minister. I say this because of two reasons. Firstly, because PMLN has already stated what their member count is, which is 9 higher than PTI. So they've already given a count of which members will be voting for them. And the fact that this judgment took place because people did not follow party lines makes it very unlikely that tomorrow we'll see anything of the sort. Secondly, we see PTI's response. And PTI's response is one of absolute dismay. Because I suppose they also know that they are not going to survive the vote count tomorrow. So they have, Imran Khan has already stated that he's challenging this decision in the Supreme Court.
Yes.
We have it on his Twitter. We also have Fawad Chaudhry, who has gone on his Twitter and said that this is a very sad judgment. This should not have taken place. So I think the real issue right now, the grounds on which they are challenging this decision is not the merits of the case itself. It came as a 4-1 decision. All the 5 judges, however, agree that recounting should have taken place. They all agree on the merits of the case. The one dissenting judge, Justice Sethi, states that in the meantime, whilst this recounting is to take place, Hamza Shahbaz should not be sitting. Recounting should take place in 2 days' time instead of 1 day time. And whilst that time is being passed, for the next 2 days, Usman Buzdar should be restored as chief minister because Hamza Shahbaz's elections are now
declared null and void.
Yeah, and so yes, because they've been null and void. So therefore, however, even within the Honorable High Court, with the 4 judges who have sided with the judgment, there is one judge, Justice Tariq Salim Sheikh, who says that he has the answer to Justice Sethi's question and he will write a judgment on it, which is expected shortly. So we don't have that yet. He's already written in his supporting note that he intends to explain why, despite being null and void, Hamza Shahbaz should stay on. And the remaining 3 judges have taken the doctrine of de facto leadership. So we have in the Pakistan's history and also in global history the concept of de facto and de jure. De jure is somebody who's appointed but does not have any real power. De facto is somebody who should not have been appointed. So in this case, for instance, Hamza Shahbaz. But since he was exercising powers and since whilst exercising those powers, he made a lot of orders. If we were to declare those initial elections null and void, then all actions taken by Hamza Shahbaz, including transfer postings, including hirings, including any budgetary spending, all of them would have to be reversed. And since that's not possible, they say that we let the doctrine of de facto leadership remain, and therefore Hamza Shahbaz should remain. So it's an interesting debate. I think this is a debate that has been taking place not just in Pakistani Supreme Court and amongst Pakistani jurists, but also internationally, because there is still not a consensus on where the power balance lies when you have an illegality that has taken place. In this case, clearly an illegality, but yet because of that illegality and post that illegality, several actions were taken, and reversing such actions would be too difficult. So, and all in all, I feel it's a good judgment. What it does is, to a degree, I think it vindicates PTI because PTI filed for this and PTI won it. It's as simple as that. Even though they won it, they still do not like the judgment because maybe they were expecting something different. So PTI had prayed for quashment of Hamza Shehbaz's appointment. The court did not quash it. Even the dissenting judge did not quash it. So, as in, when we don't have a quashment of a particular notification, we have just an order, a different direction of recounting. We have a different scenario altogether. And and frankly, in my opinion, I think it's a good decision because it takes the middle path. It satisfies everyone. PMLN is happy. PTI won, but they're not happy. Hamza Shehbaz is all right with it. So I suppose it's a good judgment then.
Now, when we hear that PTI is going to go and refer the case to the Supreme Court of Pakistan, what will they get out of it? I mean, it seems as if this particular decision that has been taken by the Honorable 5-member bench, interestingly, is very much in favor of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. But still, having said that, they are going to take it to Supreme Court of Pakistan. I mean, on what grounds and what do they want? That's the question now.
Right. So the reason why, like I said, the reason why they want to take the matter to the Supreme Court, despite having won this, is because they did not win the way they wanted to win. Their prayer was that the Lahore High Court kicks out Hamza Shehbaz and appoints I'm forgetting his name, Chaudhry Parvez Elahi as the Chief Minister. Because Chaudhry Parvez Elahi was not appointed by this court or was not even given that opportunity, because the court instead said recounting, therefore the PTI feels aggrieved. I feel it's very likely that the PTI will lose in the Supreme Court as well. This is important because this judgment comes in the light of recent Supreme Court decisions, and Supreme Court would like to uphold its own decision rather than go against it in any manner.
All right, so perhaps they have, or rather they feel that they have an edge in this particular case, and if it is referred to the Supreme Court of Pakistan, they've already given their verdict regarding this, so this is going to go in their favor.
So I feel like there's another very important aspect that I want to point out in the judgment. Nobody's talking about it, but having been through the judgment, I feel there is one important aspect that I feel is necessary. The Lahore High Court, in its parting comments, also directed PEMRA and the FIA to take notice of all media talks that take place regarding this judgment. They mentioned that there are people, vloggers, as is written in the judgment, vloggers who pretend to be political analysts, who come on TV and then bash the Supreme Court, bash the High Court without understanding what is being said.
Exactly, sir, because people like you or people like Dr. Saab who understand the politics, and they've been, as a columnist, as a journalist, Dr. Saab has been working for such a long time, seasoned journalist, right? But I fail to understand the vloggers. I mean, they have no clue what they're talking about. They come up with their own videos and just, do this bombardment. I think court should definitely go after them and tell them, listen, because this is disinformation, isn't it, sir?
Exactly.
Absolutely. So on that end, the Lahore High Court has directed the FIA to take action against anyone who tries to create fake news regarding this judgment. I think it's inevitable that we'll see certain fallout cases, at least against vloggers, if nothing else.
I totally agree with you on that. Now, Dr. Saab, one quick comment, and then we'll be talking about the second part, and that is about the economy again, because political uncertainty and your economic outlook, I mean, they're all interlinked at the moment. When you talk about Punjab, I think what Punjab offers to Pakistan or other province does. Yes, we do understand that Karachi is your economic hub. A lot of economic activities are being held, and then, when you talk about taxes, they generate a lot of it. But now the question comes to this part that how long will we stay in this particular situation, sir? Because one major political party, that is Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, which is not in the National Assembly, they claim that they have resigned, their resign has been accepted. I mean, I even still fail to understand whether they are a part of the parliament or no. Because if they are not part of the parliament, then at least on those vacant seats, you should hold a proper election, or something should happen at least. The system should run. Now, Dr.
There is a member of PTI who is part of the parliament. His name is Imran Khan. He hasn't resigned.
Now, there you go. Simple as that.
So your question, how long will it continue? Number one,
so people PTI are fed up, we want some results.
And mostly, I think PTI appears to me as a party which has no clue about what it is doing. Look at just this decision. Now, when the court verdict came, there was euphoria within PTI. That is a great decision, this and that. And then immediately after a couple of hours, they say that we will challenge this in the Supreme Court. So that means they themselves don't know, they don't understand what they are doing.
Who is calling the shots then, sir, in PTI? That is another question.
Well, I think,
Imran Khan Sahib is not a legal expert, sir.
Of course not.
So maybe it's Chaudhry Fawad Sahib and his brother Faisal.
So coming back to your, how long, I think...
Or Hassan Niazi, the nephew of the Prime Minister now. He's also been given this certain post.
I think there are two possibilities. One is the situation will be clear within a couple of days, as the other speaker also mentioned.
Before Eid.
That before Eid. And then we should not forget that there are by-elections coming in July. And they will also play a very important role, because if recent past is any guide, I mean last year or so, nearly all by-elections
have been won by the other party.
PMLN won those elections. That means PMLN's position will be strengthened, and this in the second round, if Hamza becomes chief minister with slight majority of vote, then his position will be strengthened if PMLN wins majority of by-elections. If that happens, then I think after July, this government, present government, Hamza Sharif, in power as Chief Minister of Punjab, will survive the remaining 1 year of this assembly. So that's the likely scenario that I get. So hopefully,
what if it doesn't happen? So what sort of effect it is going to have on the National Assembly? Because even there, if you look at the number game, it's almost so close.
Yes, in National Assembly there are other players also, like ANP has threatened, then MQM is also not happy. MQM is not happy, JUI is not happy.
They go and sit in the opposition
it's very
benches.
difficult for Shehbaz Sharif as Prime Minister to strike a balance. So it's a difficult ride. But I think in the given scenario, the economic difficulties that Pakistan is facing, if coalition partners have any sense of responsibility, I think they should not try to rock the boat at this moment, because that will be a disaster. Pakistan is at the moment reeling on the verge of bankruptcy.
Almost. To be very honest here, whether we admit it or we don't,
so
this
if that
is
is
what
the situation, Pakistan at the national level cannot afford yet another crisis in which the government is toppled. IMF will not give a penny.
Exactly.
China is not ready to give a lot. They have just.
But I've heard that General Bajwa, in fact, when he visited China, issues were taken care of.
Yes, but if IMF backs out, I don't think China will be able to funnel in that much money. China has agreed to roll out that, but I don't think that China. This is not China's policy to give hard cash.
They never do that.
They never do that. Yes, they never do that. So, if coalition partners have any sense of responsibility, I think at the national level, we are talking about National Assembly. So, I don't think that, MQM and ANP, they are threatening, they have some demands, but I think those demands should be listened to carefully, and if they have grievances, they should be addressed. Otherwise, Pakistan is in trouble.
I mean, I totally. So, your comment on this part, Barrister Sir?
So I feel like obviously there is a lot of economic uncertainty, and that economic uncertainty is damning. But I also feel that, and one can presume this with a fair degree of common sense, that PMLN is taking extremely unpopular measures of increasing petrol prices, increasing electricity prices. They would not be increasing prices, doing things that are going to bring them a lot of hatred from the public, especially when elections are nearby, if they did not somehow have guarantees that they would stay on for longer. These are unpopular decisions. These unpopular, like has just been stated, that we have international backers. IMF is now backing. Saudi Arabia has rolled up its funds for Pakistan. We have a consortium of Chinese companies. This is not even the Chinese government. There's a Chinese company, the consortium of 23 Chinese companies that have given us close to $3 billion.
Yeah.
Why would companies which are interested almost entirely in profit and ensuring that they get their money back, invest their money in a government they think or do not already know is going to go out? So right. All of these are very clear indications that the government is here to stay. The government has taken difficult decisions because, well, one could say, of course, that these decisions were necessary. There was no other way out of it. There's a term that has been used for a very long time in Latin America. It's called TINA, which basically goes on to say that there is no other way. And that's the term that was used to justify a lot of loans that were being taken by the IMF. So we have, of course, a requirement, whether we like it or not. We have just the two choices. Either we reform our economic system entirely, perhaps go become a communist government, fall in a socialist bloc, try and get some money then from Russia and China and other pro-communist countries like Venezuela, and try and work on that. Or we stick to what an international monetary system is, that is bought by the West. But we can't have things both ways. And if and
But I heard the Prime Minister the other day saying that now we are seriously thinking of purchasing petroleum products from Russia. And but the terms and conditions definitely which apply would be very different, because we haven't done that before.
these are good diplomatic statements, and one ought to keep making them, because one should try and at least maintain a modicum of neutrality. It's going to be very stupid if one appears to be just almost entirely on one camp, because India is purchasing Russian oil. Therefore, a lot of Pakistanis are asked. A lot of Pakistani intellectuals also ask why Pakistan is not purchasing Russian oil. Purchasing Russian oil is not an option for us, because Russian oil, the way it is very high in sulfur content. We do not have any refineries that can filter out oil to that degree. India does, therefore India is purchasing. China does, therefore China is purchasing. We unfortunately are reliant on what could be thought of as very good quality petroleum. If you were to look at our capacity of refineries, which is already very low, we are almost entirely dependent on what would be low sulfur Arab oil. So it's never happened.
That's a very technical point, and that makes a lot of sense. Now, we have also been joined in by Dr. Aqdas Afzal Saab, a senior economist. Dr. Saab, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum assalam, Faisal Saab, how are you?
I'm pretty good, sir. Thank you very much. But sir, talking about the economic situation of Pakistan once again, political uncertainty, the political temperature that's rising, unfortunately, and the kind of steps the government is taking. I mean, they have no other way out, to be very honest. I mean, looking at the IMF package, I was listening to Mifta Saab, the Prime Minister the other day, and then the press conferences. I mean, they are also making sense, but they can't justify that, I mean, international prices, they have gone up, rupee got devalued. I mean, there are multiple factors. If you put them all together, then whatever IMF is demanding makes a lot of sense. But having said that, Dr. Saab, at the same time, these are very unpopular decisions, and at the end of the day, the final consumer is suffering. I'll just give you one example that a career, if you, in fact, just buy a cow, and you know that Hyundai loader that used to cost you around 1,000 to 1,500 rupees is costing you 6,000 to 7,000 rupees now for the same distance, for the same route. I mean, everything gets impacted, sir, because of various reasons. And the trickle-down effect of that price hike actually multiplies. It has that compound effect. Dr. Saab, your take.
Yes, I think the way I was listening to the guests and the panelists that you have on the show, I think they have presented a very apt, a very appropriate summary of what is going on in Pakistan. Definitely, the situation is very alarming on the economic front. There are many challenges. But I would also say, Faisal Saab, that, given the economic challenges that Pakistani people are facing, and they are facing these economic challenges because of the international situation, primarily brought about by the opening of hostilities between Russia and Ukraine. I mean, you have a commodities super cycle that basically came about because of Russia and Ukraine. We have this exponential increase, very steep increase in the price of oil. We have the increase in so many other commodities. So the government's hands are really tied at this moment, because we have such a huge reliance on imported fuel. Now, whatever the government could do, I think they have done and more. But I think this should be a moment, this crisis should be a moment of opportunity for our policymakers to sit down, to talk about a charter of the economy, to talk about the future of this economy. Are we going to also walk into a crisis this kind of economic crisis every single time the price of oil increases in the international market? Or are we going to develop indigenous sources of energy? Now, Pakistan is a very warm, a very hot country. We have so many days of sunshine. And I think it's really very, very sad that we haven't developed solar energy as a resource. I mean, I think we could have easily done that in the last few years. We need to take so many other actions. For example, we need to talk about public transport. We need to talk about carpooling. We need to talk about developing an energy conservation strategy. And that has to start in schools. I mean, children need to be taught about how to conserve energy. And I think this situation, this challenge of not having enough energy is going to stay
not
with
only
us
energy, Dr. Saab, all the resources starting from water to whatever. Look at the kind of waste. Look at the amount of food which we waste in the weddings, for that matter. I mean, plates are full. Only 40% food is consumed. Rest is there because you're not paying for it. Honestly, this is a practice I think we should start teaching our kids from the word go. Look at the kids of Japan, for that matter. Let's not compare these two countries, but I mean, responsibility comes from the very basic level, sir. They will clean their own classrooms, they would clean the floors, they would clean everything. They own it. So once they own it, so obviously the results are there, obvious, and they are very, very, obvious. You can see them. Yeah. Now, so another important factor, talking about the overall economic situation, obviously, sir, we will, inshallah ta'ala, get through these hard times. This too shall pass, as some wise man said.
Yes.
But the thing is now, sir, that looking at what is happening in Pakistan, sir, I mean, the amount of electricity that we need. Yesterday, there was a report that there's a shortfall of around 8,000 megawatts. Look at what is happening in Karachi. The Mr. Imtiaz Sheikh, the energy minister in Sindh, said that this is not only happening in Karachi, it's all over Pakistan, sir. 12 hours of load shedding. That is quite a lot. In certain rural areas, you talk about perhaps exceeding 16 to 18 hours. No business can take place, sir. Nothing can be done. Forget about the economy and the growth and everything. And then on top, sir, we always talk about the input cost, the cost of doing business, sir. That has skyrocketed as well, sir. Transportation cost, electricity cost. Now, the wages, obviously, sir, I mean, nobody can live in a budget of 25, 30,000 rupees.
Especially salaried class. Though.
Salaried class. I mean, you have to send your kids to school, you have to come to your office, you have to, how many areas are there where you can put a check on your, you have to eat, you have to have your clothes clean, you need to pay, so you have a servant or two, you need to look after their affairs also. So it is getting impossible because the inflation is going this way. And the amount of money that should have been much more than that has actually come down. I mean, look at this new tax that has been imposed on the salaried class, sir. If somebody was making 250,000 or 300,000 rupees, sir, his actual take-home money is going to be decreased. The more money you make, technically speaking, less you take home.
Right. Yes.
So this is something, Dr. Saab, is of prime concern, isn't it?
I am more concerned about long term. Maybe, as you said, that hopefully in the short run, IMF will release money, bail you out. China will help. Saudi Arabia will help. They will supply on deferred payment. So my concern is that, even if we get all this and we survive this crisis and we sail through it, what about next year?
And then the year ahead.
And the year next. So what are we coming at? The decisions that our government should have taken much earlier, they did not take. So it's kind of a, multiple, this is not only electricity. Of course, power sector is in crisis, and power sector is in crisis because at the right moments, right policies were not made and implemented.
Discourse for that matter.
Yes.
That's a huge problem.
Yes. And why we are consuming that much of fuel, petroleum, where is all over the world, railway is the solution, not motor vehicles. In the past 20 or 30 years, in the past 30 years, we have built motorways not for rail, we have built motorways for vehicles. So what indirectly the governments have been doing, they have been encouraging the use of more and more vehicles on roads. And
sir,
if that happens,
so less than 4% of your freight actually is
on rail tracks.
Is on rail tracks. Less than 4%.
Yes.
It should have been at least 96% on the rail and 4% on the roads.
Rest energy and
transportation.
And then what
look
we
at
have done
the way they damage the roads. These trucks and huge vehicles with 4-5 axles. Now you know, sir, you travel and the road is like it's so wavy because of overloading and so many other issues. Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Long-term goals, medium-term, and then short-term. We're not emphasizing on the real long-term issues. Like, for example, sir, railway, as you just mentioned, or bringing in some new, or looking at the track, because, when we say, okay, fine, we will start sending goods from Pakistan via Iran into Turkey. Sir, the gauge is different.
Exactly.
There you go.
And in railway, you have one locomotive. That one locomotive can pull 50 carriages.
Yes.
Of load of passengers, and here you have trucks, and each truck consumes almost as much as one locomotive consumes. So if that happens, and then what we have done to railway, in fact, if you compare with even neighboring countries like India and Bangladesh, they have increased railway track. We have decreased. In the past 70 years, we have not added a single kilometer in the railway.
Those tracks were all stolen. You know that, right,
Exactly.
sir? Exactly. So that is so unfortunate. Now coming to you, Basit, obviously you understand about economic issues as well and what's going on in Pakistan. Now, we have also learned that the food prices will go up, as you mentioned, that the wheat, 30% of the wheat is actually produced globally in Ukraine and Russia. Well, once again, I'll mention that, when I looked at the flag of Ukraine, interestingly, the blue part on top is the sky and the yellow part is about grain, wheat. So, just imagine, that's the world food basket. We are getting expensive edible oil because, again, most of it is produced in Ukraine. You talk about fertilizer, 17% of the global fertilizer production is in Russia. So, these 80% of the pulses Pakistan is importing, being an agro-based country. Technically speaking, sir, I think we need to put our own house in order. We need to make sure and look at it from another perspective, that what are our strengths, what are the weaknesses. Let's capitalize on your strengths, let's eliminate the weaknesses and then move forward, explore new opportunities. But sir, unfortunately, whoever was in power, whichever government was taking the decision, sir, they neglected on so many fronts. Don't you think, sir, this is the time that we need to realize and put our heads together and think about, making Pakistan into a country where people should actually come from abroad. Like students used to be in so many universities from Middle East, from Far East, from Africa, and they used to come and study here, sir. So many things were so good. There were times when we all used to look up to,
I agree with you. It's so interesting that you would mention that Ukraine, for instance, and Russia, both of them are some of the world's largest wheat producers, and they are very, very correctly stated. But Pakistan is very high on every agricultural scale. Just about everything. If you were to look at dairy production, Pakistan's in the top 10. Any food, just take any food, just
rice, dates, wheat, milk.
Pakistan is in the top 10. But where does Pakistan lose? Now, this is what's interesting. Pakistan loses because of very poor supply chains. We have some of the worst supply chain systems, some of the worst logistics systems in the world. So whereas we have been laying down roads, we have been giving transport options, they have been made in such a manner that they never benefited the farmer. So as a result, what happens is that whatever Pakistan produces, milk, fruits, 40% of them go to waste. These are things that
fruits and vegetable both.
Of course, vegetables as well. Now, Pakistan is extremely lucky. I'm sure all of you have lived abroad. I have lived abroad. People grow vegetables in their houses and they can't for more than a couple of months a year because it's too cold. Pakistan, you can grow vegetables anytime, any season, because the weather is such that it's very conducive. You can get up to 4 to 5 crops of any crop that you want to grow. We're very lucky that way. This is why we have words about Pakistan of it being very fertile. We have a lot of sun, we have sufficient water, we have also very, very good arable land. Despite all of these things, we are still losing out because of very poor policies. So, for instance, I always say that one thing that the government should do is give free seeds, encourage people to plant their own vegetables, and like you have in the West, then have little farmer cooperatives, little housing cooperatives. Every weekend, everybody gets together. So, for instance, I am growing tomatoes. I go and exchange my tomatoes for bell peppers, so that everybody eats healthier. Our medical bill is reduced, and these are things that have happened in, for instance, countries like Cuba, which were undergoing a lot of sanctions. So people just started growing their own produce. And because Cuba is like Pakistan, they have good weather, they have access to water, and they have
Sir,
good
one of
land.
the top sugarcane growers in the world.
Of course. So whatever you need, you can easily grow. We don't need to be looking at Russian or Ukrainian wheat. Firstly, I also want to point something out here, that when a nation is in crisis, they also change their eating habits. We have seen this the world over. Whenever during World War II, people started eating something different. In Cuba, when there were sanctions, people changed their cuisine. So I think we also need to understand that maybe we cannot have everything that we want. But I also want to focus on another important aspect that has been discussed, and I feel it's very important to touch upon who I believe the real culprits of Pakistan are. So right now, 50% of our total import bill is oil. That's already been said. So oil is killing us because we can't afford oil. But only 30% of this oil is being used in cars. The rest of about 60% of this oil, 10% goes for other things. 60% of this oil goes to IPPs. And the question is, why have we not managed to change our energy production means? Why Pakistan is the only country in the world that still has power plants that run on furnace oil. Two power plants in Pakistan still run on furnace oil. Only country in the world. Pakistan is the only country in the world that continues to run power plants on expensive LNG, on expensive liquid natural gas, and expensive oil. And it is this IPP mafia that has such a sway over the Pakistani government. And to that end, I will actually give a lot of credit to Imran Khan, because Imran Khan, when he took power, he tried to address it. So he made a committee. That committee came up with its findings, and the committee stated that Pakistan's biggest expense has always been its circular debt to the IPPs. Nobody talks about it. Nobody cares about it. Nobody asks why some private people seem to have absolute control over Pakistani power. And unfortunately, we don't see that conversation happening even today. Imran Khan
Can't
tried.
take the name of that gentleman, but we all know one of the richest men in Pakistan. In fact, he is the main man. Whenever the subsidies are paid, he is paid upfront immediately.
The owner of IDP.
There you go.
Yeah.
The
Absolutely.
vested interest, that's the
I think
problem.
these are issues that governments need to address head on. Once again, I keep referring over and over again to Latin America. The reason why I refer to Latin America is because Latin Americans are one of those countries which were heavily indebted by IMF, and they were the ones who were able to come out of this so-called IMF trap that we speak of. And they did
Whether
so
it's
by
Argentina or it's Cuba,
yes,
so many other
Argentina,
countries.
Venezuela, a lot of them. And so they are models for us to study. And so, for instance, one of these things that these people did is they just said no to circular debt of the IPPs. They said, no, we'll not pay. Do whatever you have to do. Go away. Get out of the country if you have to. We are not going to do anything. They did
All
not
right.
give in to that pressure. And
All
that
right.
is the kind of leadership that then we need as well.
All right. We have been joined in by Dr. Aqdas once again, sir. In fact, and I want to put one question to him, and then I'll come to you, Dr. Dr. Aqdas, there was this story that we wanted 4 major consignments of LNG, but now the Europeans, I mean, they are ready to pay cash and pick up their product, whereas when it comes to Pakistan, sir, I mean, the problem still exists. I mean, we are out of money, or rather short of money. Let me put it this way. Still, when you talk about the international market, so whosoever is paying you more will end up picking up the product. So, talking about the LNG issue, sir, because the other day I was listening to our Minister of State for Energy, Dr. Musaddiq Malik, Senator Musaddiq Malik, and Dr. Saab was saying that the month of July and onwards, that means that you're talking about August also, they will be very tough. We can face more load shedding and perhaps slight increase in the energy as well. So, sir, already, they have increased the electricity by 47%, 45% increase in the natural gas prices. Petroleum products are right in front of you. Ms. Miftah Saab said that, we will take away the remaining 50 rupees subsidy on each litre. So, just imagine that, putting all together, sir, it seems as if, you know, it's a perfect recipe for disaster, isn't it? But we don't have a choice. Aqdas sahab?
Stringent conditions with the IMF, and the IMF has asked the Pakistani government to produce a primary surplus of 142 billion rupees. And the program is contingent on Pakistan following all these promises that have been made with the IMF. And the IMF is not cutting Pakistan any slack. They're not giving us any room, primarily because they feel that the previous administration did not honor their promises. So for this administration, they just don't want to take a chance, and they are making sure that whatever prices or increases happen in the international market, they are immediately passed on to the final consumer, and the government does not use or try to shield the final consumer from these price increases, thereby increasing its fiscal deficit. So I think the government again is in a bind, like you mentioned early on, and I think there are very few options in front of the government. But I think one option that they do have is again trying to develop, number one, an energy conservation strategy, trying to convert from fossil sources of energy to solar and renewable sources of energy, and finally moving towards a rationing plan in which we can try to actually lessen or reduce our consumption of imported fuel. I think these three things can really help Pakistan's economy
they can really
in the
make
medium term.
Huge difference for sure. So last comment from you, sir, on the LNG issue and the kind of statement that was issued by Senator Musaddad Malik that July, August, I mean, they'll be tough months because the exact impact on inflation, we haven't seen it yet, sir. It is going to come after 6 to 8 weeks.
Yes. So hard times are ahead. So we should be ready for that, and apparently there is no other option for the government also. So hard times are there.
But anyway, sir, let's hope
things
do get settled soon. Thank you very much, Naazir, for your presence, and thank you very much, Barrister Saifullah Ghauri sahab, for your time as well. And I would also like to thank Dr. Aqdas Afzal sahab for his comments as well. And that's all we have for this hour and this week. Inshallah, I'll see you on Monday next week. Till then, you have a great weekend. Look after yourself. Khuda Hafiz.